It might be interesting to judge people today by the color of their eyes. Would you like to try this?
Yeah!
Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Since I'm the teacher and I have blue eyes, I think maybe the blue-eyed people should be on top the first day.
And up here?
I mean, the blue-eyed people are the better people in this room. Oh, yes, they are. Blue-eyed people are smarter than brown-eyed people. The blue-eyed people get 5 extra minutes of recess, while the brown-eyed people have to stay in. The brown-eyed people do not get to use the drinking fountain. You'll have to use the paper cups. You brown-eyed people are not to play with the blue-eyed people on the playground, because you are not as good as blue-eyed people.
And it seemed like when we were down on the bottom, everything bad was happening to us.
The way they treated you, you felt like you didn't even want to try to do anything.
It seemed like Mrs. Elliott was taking our best friends away from us.
15 minutes. Yesterday, I told you that brown-eyed people aren't as good as blue-eyed people. That wasn't true. I lied to you yesterday. The truth is that brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. The brown-eyed people. Brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. They're smarter than blue-eyed people. And if you don't believe it, look at Brian. Do blue-eyed people know? Okay, you want to be timed this morning?
Yeah. A.
I use Orton Gillingham Phonics. We use the card pack. And the children, the brown-eyed children, were in the low class the first day, and it took them 5.5 minutes to get through the card pack. The second day, it took them 2.5 minutes. The only thing that had changed was the fact that now they were superior people.
I thought you were going to get in the
You went faster than I've ever had anyone go through the card pack. Why couldn't you get them yesterday?
We had those collars on.
You think the collars kept you?
You just keep thinking about those collars.
Oh.
And my eyes kept getting rolling around.
Oh, and you couldn't think as well with the collars on. 4 minutes and 18 seconds.
I knew we weren't going to make it.
How long did it take you yesterday?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. How long did it take you today?
4 minutes and 18 seconds.
What happened?
One down.
Why? What were you thinking of?
This.
So as you can see from the video, whatever the teacher said, the kids believed. If the teacher said that the kids with the blue eyes were more smarter or a better reader or anything like that, then the kids with the brown eyes started to think worse of themselves and think that the kids with the blue eyes truly were better than them. So these kids listened with so much intent and truly believed in the teacher and what she was saying. And the way that the teachers talked to them and what she said that the blue-eyed kids could do truly affected how they viewed themselves. And that just brings us into what we wanted to do for our study.
Okay, so from what Olivia said, we go right into the 2 topics we wanted to cover. The 2 main topics we wanted to go over were how kids listen, how they listen to peers around them, how they listen to people of authority in their lives, how they listen to parents, anything like that. We also wanted to look into how the way that we talk to children affects their behaviors or demeanors, anything like that. And so the 2 ways, the services we did to look into these 2 different topics was I volunteered at elementary aged wrestling practices, so K through 6th grade wrestling practices. I volunteered and looked directly into these 2 topics, and Olivia will explain her service now.
So what I did was I went to Badger Daycare and I volunteered there. I was a teacher or a mentor to them, and I pretty much just got to play with the kids and hang out with them and really get to know them. So that's what I did for my service. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're going to tie in our service projects into the main elements that we want to talk about. So the first element is listening. One thing that I noticed when I went and did my service was that we had this little boy, and he was in a high chair and we were having snack time, and he just kept throwing his food on the ground. Every single time we'd give him more, he would just throw it on the ground, and we kept saying, no, don't do that, and he just kept doing it more and more. It wasn't until we said, all right, if you eat this food, then we can go play outside after. All of a sudden, that's what he wanted to do. So he listened to us finally and started eating his food so he could go outside and play. Giving the children rewards was also another thing that I noticed during carpet time. So what carpet time is all the kids come around and we sing songs and they learn the letter of the day, and then they get to say what day it is and just kind of prepare them for kindergarten. And they, one thing I noticed that they would be just off the wall. They would just be not paying attention and going over there and just everywhere. And it wasn't until the teacher was like, all right, who wants to put Tuesday up on the board, that all the kids would all of a sudden listen and pay attention and be focused in. And it was just really funny to see that, like, as soon as they wanted to do something, then they would listen to it. And as soon as they got a reward, then they would be listened and focused in. Another example that I saw from my service project was when the kids would get into arguments. As a teacher or volunteer there, we had to kind of talk them through why they need to listen to the other person when they would fight with each other, when they were fighting over a toy. You would have to kind of make them step back and make them realize, all right, why does she want your toy? You need to listen to her. And once you got them to listen, they kind of understood why the other person wanted their toy, and they got along better after that. And instead of fighting with each other, they started to play with each other. And so those were my examples that I saw through my service project with listening, and now Austin will give his.
So there was two main things that I noticed that I would categorize in under listening. The first one was that the younger kids, so probably the third graders to the kindergartners, kind of that age gap of the K through sixth grade kids that I worked with. So those younger age kids, that they would listen better when they were physically shown what to do. I noticed that when we'd bring them in for a technique circle, so the technique circle is, let me explain that real fast. So at a wrestling practice, usually the coach will bring in everybody and around in a circle, show them the technique as to what to do, and then they'll send them out in little groups with their partners of 2 or 3, and then they'll try the moves on their own. They'll try to get things down. But I noticed that the younger kids, after they would break from a technique circle, weren't really getting it. They weren't understanding it. They weren't able to comprehend by just seeing it from the coach. They really needed to be shown physically. They needed one-on-one, someone to come over and physically, show them how to move, where to put their hands, head position, how to move their feet, stuff like that is really what made it click for these younger kids. The older kids, they were able to comprehend it by just listening, if they would give their attention. And then the second thing I noticed, like Olivia said, rewards. Rewards were a big thing. We noticed that some kids were starting to drag, and they were starting to kind of not give, 100%. So one of the other main coaches offered the reward of a game at the end of practice. The game that he offered was the shirt game. So the shirt game is they take their shirts off, tuck it in their shorts, and they start the game. You run around and try not to get your shirt pulled. To young kids, it's a pretty fun game. So when that offer was put on the table, they all piped up. They all perked up. They were all eager, excited. They all wanted to do the right thing for the coaches. They wanted to impress all the coaches so they would be able to play the shirt game. And this was a big helper in keeping their focus towards what it needed to be. And it also helped, little did they know, it also helped them improve because they put more attention into listening, which helped them do, pick up on the little things to help do the moves better, and ultimately it made them get better. And with that being said, Olivia will help tie that back into the video we shown in our introduction.
So just with the video, the kids really trusted what this mentor, this teacher had said to them. They really just listened to her, and they wanted to hear her advice and hear what she had to say about everything. And so when she did tell them the things about their eye colors, and they listened intently to it, and this listening changed completely to how they saw themselves and how they saw others. If they wouldn't have listened to the teacher, then they could have just said like, this experiment doesn't really work or whatever. But they didn't. When they listened to the teacher, which most of us do, we listen to what people tell us, we take it to heart more than we even realize. And it just completely changed the kids' perceptions. And throughout the service project and the examples that we just gave, you can see how when we would say things, or whenever the kids would really listen, it just made that much of a difference of how they perceive things.
Okay, so we're going to roll right into our next topic. Our next topic is we want to look into how the way we talk to them affected their behaviors or anything like that. So I noticed a lot of different things regarding this topic throughout the duration of the wrestling practices I went to. The first one that I noticed was that when one of the wrestlers did something exceptionally well, whether they did the technique perfect or they were just working hard, they were really doing what the coaches were looking for, that if they were made an example, so if one of the coaches would stop practice and say, hey, look, Timmy over there is doing exactly what we want. Go ahead, Timmy, show us what you're doing. And they would do an example that it would make not only Timmy, who was doing the right thing, feel good, like, oh, this is what I want, and it would reinforce his behavior. It's like, oh, I want to keep doing this. I want to keep making the coaches happy. But it would also have sort of an adverse effect. It would make the other kids around them in the room work harder. They wanted to do exactly what Timmy was doing. They wanted to follow his example and make the coaches happy. And this next example is kind of contrary to the first example I said, was when a kid was doing something wrong, whether they were not paying attention or they were just doing the technique wrong, it needed to be stopped. But this needed to be stopped in such a way that it would accomplish them knowing, after you would stop the wrong behavior, you needed to let them know that they could do it right. They needed to be able to feel accomplished as in that they were able to do what you were asking them to do. And this was really, really a big thing when, say, a group was all let's say 2 or 3 of them were just lollygagging. When the coach would call in a technique circle, they would be lollygagging. That behavior needed to be stopped, and it needed to be stopped in such a way that everyone in the wrestling room knew that that's not what you're supposed to do. You need to come in and give your full undivided attention, and it would help bring everyone's focus back into the main coach ready to teach something. And then, in addition to my 2 previous examples, different kids' personalities need to be taken into account when you're either rewarding them or disciplining them. For example, there's this one kid. His name was Brody. He was one of the more, I'd say, advanced wrestlers in the room. He was pretty good for as young as he was, but he was really kind of everywhere. He was just kind of didn't really pay attention. But it was his dad that actually got after him, and his dad kind of got after him, but didn't yell at him, but he just kind of scolded him and said, "Hey, bring it together." And it kind of made Brody mad, but it did so in a way that it motivated him to do better, to make, whether it was his dad happy or the coaches happy. But it was good to see him bring it 110%, because then it raised the level of competition of everyone around him in the room. It was good to see. But there's also the other end of the spectrum where some kids, they kind of have to be approached a little softer. You can't quite get after them as hard, but you also need to figure out how you can coach them in a stern way to make them, perform desirably. And this will come as a coach, at least from talking to the coaches that coach every day. They said that this comes from just coaching the kids, the same set of kids over a prolonged amount of time. You learn how to coach certain kids and how to act in certain situations to make them perform to the best of their abilities. And then the last thing I noticed was this was a form of nonverbal communication. It was the body language. I noticed that if there was a kid in a group of 2 or 3 that was kind of slouching kind of dragging and just kind of moping around practice, it spread to what his partner or partners, they all kind of started moping, and they were slow coming into the circle. They were slow leaving the circle. There was everything about him was slow and kind of drug on. And I also noticed there was one particular coach that he must have had a rough day at work or something like that, to where every group that he helped, he kind of left his little bit of orneriness there. All the kids that he targeted, they kind of slouched and drug their feet. But I noticed that the kids that were excited, ecstatic to be there, that kind of spread to everyone around them as well. They wanted to perform, they wanted to be excited, they were excited to be there and anything like that. And yeah, that just kind of will tie into what Olivia's examples will be.
So Austin gave many good examples about how what we say to kids affect how they view themselves. And when I went and volunteered at the Badger daycare, I noticed this as well. There was one little girl that she was I could kind of tell she was pretty insecure about herself, and she would always try and play with these other two little girls, but always second guessed herself and second guessed like if she should do that when it was like a make-believe game. Like even though it was make-believe, she still second guessed herself. And so one day I just took her aside, and because she was very upset because these girls, she didn't really understand how to play with them, and she just was overthinking it. But I just brought her aside and I just said, hey, I explained to her that it doesn't have to be perfect, it's just a game. And I just told her how she's so creative and how fun she is to be around. And after that, I just saw kind of an automatic switch of like confidence in her, and she did go play with those little girls and she ended up being better. But then when I would go back and work with this little girl, I could tell like every time before I talked to her, she would be down on herself or something like that, which is sad because she was at such a young age. But as soon as me being a teacher and a mentor told her, hey, you're so creative, you are so good at drawing that picture, you're so good at playing kitchen, she automatically was just like, yeah, I'm a good cook, and like, watch me cook, I'll make you some food. And it was just a cool experience to see like how if I gave her positive encouragement, then it really affected her. Another thing that I noticed that just in general with all the kids was if I started talking to them about a subject that they like or something like that, and I asked them questions, and as soon as I got more involved in the topic, they got more involved and they got more excited, and they just really like looked up to whatever and got excited about what they were saying. And I just thought it was cool that as I got more interested in the topic, they got more interested, and it made them all excited, and almost too excited at sometimes, but it made them talk to me more and be more responsive and play more, play harder. And it was just fun to see how whenever I said something to the kids, it did affect them so much, and how much of an influence that I had on these kids. This leads into Austin tying it back into what we've been learning in our class.
So we've gone over the positive and negative cycles in class, and so the way we talk to them can really influence the positive thoughts that whether the kids in the daycare or the kids in the wrestling practice in a sports environment think. So these positive thoughts that I can do it, I can do these hard things, will lead to the desirable behavior, the doing the good things, the going the extra mile, whether it's staying after practice or whether it's sharing at daycare or anything like that. And then it'll lead to the positive thoughts of, oh, that was a good thing. I did a good thing right there. I did a good job. Then that'll lead to a higher self-esteem. They'll think of themselves better. And then that cycle continues to them, I can do another hard thing. And then the cycle will just continue and continue, and they'll continue to do these good things. And there's also the downside of that. There is the negative side of if you can make someone think that they can't do it. And then that can't do it attitude leads to an undesirable behavior or the not trying or anything like that. And then that leads to the, oh, I did it wrong, or I failed again, or I can't do it. And then that leads to low self-esteem, which then that cycle continues and continues and continues. And so that's where we really got to be cautious of, what we say to these young kids, and because we can really direct, which path they go down. And it's, it's something we should be cautious of.
As you can see, the way that we talk to children and how they listen to us can completely influence how they view themselves and how they can view others and people around them. It's like in the video, how we saw that this teacher that they looked up to had so much influence on them, on the things that she said. When she said that the blue-eyed kids got the priority or were superior than the brown-eyed kids, then it completely changed how the kids thought, because they listened intently to her, and the words she said, they really took to heart, and they applied them, and they really thought that that changed who they were. And so that just goes to show how what we say and what we say to the little kids and to anyone really, how it just changes their perceptions on things. So we've noticed some positive things throughout this experiment that Austin's going to go over now.
So we were able to both see some positive takeaways from both topics we went over. The positive takeaways for listening that we noticed was that if children or students or athletes you're coaching or anything of that nature, if you're a person of authority, if you reward them for listening, they'll be more inclined to listen again. But not only to just you, as if you're the coach or teacher or someone in a position of authority, they'll be more inclined to listen to everybody, to teammates, to students, to peers, to everybody. They'll kind of key in as to that listening's a good thing, and they'll be a more intent listener. And then the positive takeaway that we were able to pull out of from the way that we talked to them was that you can really affect someone, and like if you speak to someone in a positive, uplifting, you can do this type of way, that they'll be more inclined to do a hard task or to do the desired task that is needed of them. And this is, it'll help them try to impress, in their work ethic or anything like that, and it'll help them in every aspect of their life, whether it's school, work, their home life, their family life, a marriage, or anything like that. It'll help them know that they can do these hard things just because they hear it. And then this will lead right into the self-fulfilling prophecy that we've also talked about, that that if they hear it from somebody, then they believe it, and then because they believe it, they'll make it. That it will happen because they'll make it happen. That's the self-fulfilling prophecy that we went over. So
and the things that we've talked about, it isn't just true for children. It's true for anyone, any person, any life type, any lifestyle, and any gender. Like, it just completely changes how you view things when someone says something to you, especially when us as humans are social creatures and we listen to what other people have to say, and it truly does impact how we view ourselves and how we view others and how we view the world. And so just to wrap up our project, what we ask is that you guys notice how you talk to other people, because the people will end up listening to you, and because of this, it will end up influencing them in either a positive way or in a negative way, what the words you say to them. And so we just want you guys to choose your words wisely.